All right, last couple of weeks we've been looking at prophets, right? First we looked at Elijah, then we looked at Amos. Today we're going to look at Isaiah. Now Isaiah is probably the best known of all the prophets. Our New Testament is filled with Isaiah quotes, more than all the rest of the prophets combined. It's in the words of Isaiah that more than anyone else we see the hope and the promise of the one we call Messiah, the one chosen by God to save and deliver us. Now Isaiah lived about 700 years before Jesus. 700 years is a long time. What was happening 700 years ago from right now? Right? Europe was still in the Dark Ages. We still thought the earth was flat. A lot happens in 700 years. So we're going back. Isaiah is 700 years before Jesus. Now I got a little geography lesson for you here. All right, so this is the Palestine area down at the bottom down there. Isaiah lived in what we call Judah. All right, there was a civil war divided. Judah was the southern kingdom, Israel the northern kingdom, and so there's been a split between the two. The next country up is called Aram, and that's where Abraham was from. That's where his people lived. They were Arameans, and so they're sort of the closest cousins to the Jewish people. But you can see they're in the shadow of Assyria up here. And Assyria was flexing its muscles. They wanted to spread out a little bit. So Aram and Israel decide to make an alliance. We're going to work together to defend ourselves against the Assyrians because we know that they're coming. And so they went down to Judah and said, Judah, why don't you help us? Let's all three of us band together so we can fight the Assyrians. And Judah said, no, thank you. All right, we don't want to. And so Israel and Aram said, what do you mean you're not going to help us? So Israel and Aram decide we're going to conquer Judah first, and that way we can use the money that Judah had and their weapons, and we can use them to help defend ourselves. If they won't fight with us, we'll fight against them. And so they go down there to conquer Judah. And so the king of Judah, his name is Ahaz, is worried because it's 2 against 1. Their closest friends are ready to do war against them, and he's very worried about this. So Isaiah the prophet comes to King Ahaz and says, you don't have to worry. These guys are not going to be a problem for you. And Ahaz looks out the window. He says, they're a problem for me. And Ahaz says, no, God's going to take care of it. God will give you a sign. He says, I don't want a sign. I just want these guys gone. And so Isaiah says, all right, here's your sign. All right, sort of Jeff Foxworthy kind of thing. All right, here's your sign. He says, look, a woman is with child. She's going to bear a son, and she'll name him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Before this child knows how to refuse evil and choose what is good, the land before those kings you are in dread will be deserted. So that's the sign, that's the comfort, the promise. You don't have to worry about these kings. And that's exactly what happened. Within a few years, the Assyrians came down, they wiped out Aram, they wiped out Israel, they came right up to the gates of Jerusalem, ready to lay siege to them, and then they turn around and go back. Miraculously, Judah is saved. The Syrians had bigger fish to fry. They had Babylonians to worry about. And so they pull back, and they are saved. All right, so skip ahead 700 years. Matthew is telling us the story of Jesus. And he says, how can I describe the story of Jesus? And it says it's like the story of Isaiah. And remember that in Isaiah, a child was born as a sign of God's presence with them. He says that's what's happening here. He says this child, Jesus, is the one we will call Emmanuel. For he reminds us that God is with us. God will save us. So which was it? Was the birth of Emmanuel about assuring King Ahaz he didn't have to worry about these other kings, or was it about Jesus being born 700 years ago? Or is it about both? I'm going to go with both, all right? And I think God still speaks to us, still speaks through these words of Isaiah. Even 2,000 years later, they still are living words to us. But how can it be all three of those things at the same time? Well, it's sort of like a mountain range. I don't know if any of you guys ever been out west, you've seen mountains, you look and say, oh, there's a tall mountain. And I imagine the first pioneers coming out, heading west, trying to get to the Pacific Ocean, they think, oh, there's a mountain. We'll go over the mountain, down on the other side of the mountain, there's going to be Pacific Ocean, and we're there. Well, they got up close and they realized it's not just one mountain. This is mountain in front of mountain, in front of mountain, in front of mountain. All right, hundreds of miles of mountains. What looked like one ridge from a distance, they realized was many mountains spanning distances. Now, Isaiah's vision is sort of like looking across a mountain range, but not just across distance, but across time. Right? So Isaiah is looking and he sees all these mountains all in a row. You can see 700 BC. You can see 700 years later where Jesus, or 2,000 years later, sees us. We can see all of these. The words of Isaiah speaks across all that distance of time. It meant something at 700 BC, meant something at Jesus' time, means something for us. Chapter 7 of Isaiah, we find these words. So, as a child to be born, his name will be Emmanuel. So a child was named to talk about a future. In the next chapter, another child is born. And this child is also given a name to describe the future. This child is named Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz. All right, which is a mouthful. Wouldn't you like a name like that? Or I would go with Emmanuel. But his brother gets Emmanuel. This guy gets Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz, which means there will be looting and stealing. What a great name, all right? But that's exactly what's going to happen, because he says before the child knows the difference between right and wrong, Israel and Aram will be destroyed. There will be looting and stealing because the Assyrians are going to wipe them out. Next chapter, chapter 9, again, a child is born and given a name to talk about the future. Let me read a little bit from chapter 9. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You've multiplied the nation, you've increased its joy. They rejoice as you at joy at a harvest, as when people exult when dividing the plunder. For the yoke of their burden, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressors, you've broken as on the day of Midian. We go, oh yeah, day of Midian. And we go, what? What's the day of Midian? Doesn't explain it here, presumes everyone knows the day of Midian. Well, it goes back to the story of a guy named Gideon. And Gideon was a judge who was raised up to raise up an army to fight off the Midianites. I don't know if you remember this story. It's back in the book of Judges. And so Gideon raises up an army. He gathers together 32,000 troops to do war against the Midianites. But God says, that's too many soldiers. Tell anyone who wants to go home that they can go home. So he says, all right, you guys, whoever wants to can go home. So 22,000 go home, right? There's 10,000 left. God looks at the 10,000 soldiers he has, and he says, that's still too many soldiers. And so he gives Gideon a test to give to the soldiers, and he ends up with only 300 soldiers out of 32,000. And God says, that's enough. We'll do it with 300. And they are victorious over the Midianites. But God wanted to demonstrate that it was the power of God that would save the people, not the size of their army. So Isaiah, many, many years later is saying, it's like the story of the day of Midian. Our hope, our security does not rest in the number of soldiers we have. Our rest and security lies in God. He writes, for all the boots of the trampling warriors, all the garments rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born to us, a son given to us. Authority rests on his shoulders, and he will be named Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority will grow continually. There will be peace, endless peace in the throne of David and his kingdom. He will uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Now, from our perspective, we say, boy, that sounds like Jesus. But what did Ahaz hear when Isaiah spoke these words to him 700 years before Jesus? Like Ahaz said, I have a son who's going to be born. His name is Hezekiah. And Hezekiah becomes one of the greatest kings of Israel. He is much better than his father Ahaz was. He stopped the idolatry that was going on under Ahaz. He cleansed the temple. He called for a national repentance, for the whole country to repent. He reinstituted the celebration of Passover, which they had quit doing. Righteousness and justices were restored, and it was like the glory days of when King David was king. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long because Hezekiah's son was just like his grandpa. He was like Ahaz, and he turned back all the reforms that Hezekiah had done. And God's judgment falls upon the people, and they lose everything. But these prophecies of Isaiah, made sense to the people who heard them at the time, but we say it also makes sense to us as we think about who Jesus was. We may look and we say, well, there's still war and injustice. Where's this endless peace that was supposed to happen? Well, there's still, as we're looking at the mountain range, we're not over the mountains yet. We're still looking ahead. There are still peaks to come for us that we look forward to. But these words proclaimed announced hope in the midst of darkness. The people who live in deep darkness, who walk in darkness, have seen a light. A light shines. There is hope for us. Now, light becomes important. I just hate it when we go off daylight saving time, right? Where it's dark by 4:30 in the afternoon. And it's just, it makes some people very sad, right? Any of you sad people that have seasonal affective disorder? When the light goes away, we just get depressed. It's hard to function. Life is just, has all the energy in life gets sucked out of it. We need light, not darkness, in order to thrive and to do that. There's a little town in Norway. It's called Rjukan. And they really know this. They live this reality. If you go visit Rjukan during the summer, it's a nice place to go. Nice sunny place to go. Beautiful tall mountains on both sides of the peaks. But in the winter, it's a whole different story because it is so deep in the valley. For 6 months out of the year, from September until March, sunlight does not reach the valley floor. They live in darkness. And so what they built there in Rjukan is something called a heliostat, which is large mirrors controlled by solar panels that track the sun. And so they take the reflected light of the sun up here, goes down onto the mirror, and the mirror reflects it down to the bottom of the valley where they can have a little bit of sunlight for 6 months out of the year. So here they are. You got the little mirror up on the hall, and they're down in this town square. They have the light that shines down there. So in the midst of the darkness, there's one little spot where all the Norwegians gather during the winter, and they hang out and just soak in the sun rays. So people who lived in darkness, we go to the light because we know the light is that which gives us hope in the midst of it. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light, Isaiah said. Those who lived in the land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. When it came time to pick a day to celebrate the birth of Jesus, we had to figure out, well, which day are we going to use? We don't know when Jesus was really born. We choose December 25th because we could choose any day we wanted to, since we didn't know what the day was. So why choose December 25th? Well, it's because it was so close to the winter solstice. Winter solstice is this day where all of a sudden, instead of the days getting shorter, the days are going to start getting longer. It's the return of the sun. The sun is coming, and the darkness is going to disappear, and each day there's going to be more and more light. They said that's the day we should celebrate Jesus being born. And so we use December 25th to celebrate Jesus. And we spend some time getting ready to celebrate Christmas. We call it Advent. And Advent used to work really, really well. I don't think it does anymore. It worked really well because people used to celebrate Christmas on December 25th. Now we start celebrating Christmas the day after Thanksgiving, right? And when you celebrate the day, starts doing Christmas the day after Thanksgiving, you don't have time for a season of Advent. So I'm advocating that we should start Advent now, before Thanksgiving. if you're going to have any chance of Advent working at all, you have to get ahead of the game before you start celebrating Christmas. And to do that, you have to be very intentional.
Dear friends and family, I don't think I can do Christmas this year. And Mom, I know what you're gonna say. Don't be so dramatic, but I'm serious. I love parts of it, don't get me wrong. The family dinner, Ben's famous eggnog, Grandma's oatmeal cookies, Tim's Christmas sweater hugs. But that's not what's getting to me. It's the 10 days till Christmas pressure, the never-ending to-do list, the traffic jams, the credit card debt, all for what? To get that right gift to give meaning to it all? We spend so much money every year on good things for each other, but also on a lot of things just for things' sake. Like that random gift card for you, Tracy, because I never know what you want. Or Cousin Joel, that shirt I know you didn't really like, that wasn't your size, which made you go back to the mall and waste that whole day just so you could receive a gift from me. And it's not that gifts are bad, but lately I don't understand how all the buying and busyness has anything to do with celebrating Christmas.
There were shepherds, and an angel appeared and said, "Be not afraid. I bring you good news. A baby has been born. His name will be Emmanuel, which means God with us."
When did I forget what this has always been about? Maybe Christmas doesn't need to be different, but I need to be different. So here's what I'm gonna do. The wife and I sat down. We decided to spend less anxiety, energy, and money, and instead give more relationally, like how God gave his son. Some of you we see all the time, so we thought about the gifts that could make that time more meaningful together. Others of you we don't see as often, so we wanted to make something with a bit of heart. We tried lots of things, and then we found out from a friend that you can roast your own coffee beans with a popcorn popper. So our family is making gifts, with some personal notes and prayers. If the love of Jesus changed the world, what if, in celebration of that, we took a portion of what we used to spend on gifts for each other and instead gave a lasting gift to those in need? I know what you're thinking. Where do you even start? Well, how about here? Did you know that every minute a child dies from a water-related disease? What if we could give someone the gift of clean drinking water? I know, alone, our small gift doesn't seem huge. But the story of Christmas is that we're not alone. And if we all gave together, all of a sudden it's not so small anymore. And that's a Christmas story that I'd like to be a part of, and one we would all remember. So dear friends and family, who's ready for that Christmas? I know we are, and we're inviting you to join us.
All right, Advent Conspiracy. It's a wonderful resource. I want to commend to you and invite you to go to our webpage. Has a link for that. We had it in our newsletter as well, where you can go and we'll guide you through this. If you go on the webpage, there's a little place where it says Advent Conspiracy. Click on that. You can click on a family resource guide, a little Advent calendar, a little map kind of stuff that helps give you all kinds of ideas, devotional things, ways in which we can do this together, make sure we keep the meaning of Christmas the way it's supposed to be. So you can print it off or just look at it right online if you want to do that. We'll get some paper copies out and around on the coming weeks as well. This nice little map to help guide you through that. There's 4 kind of steps. To make it meaningful, we simply worship more fully, spend less, give more, love all. This upcoming season of Advent and Christmas should not be something we simply want to endure or get through. It's supposed to be something that fills us with hope. It's supposed to be a light that shines in the darkness. All right. Well, let's be real radical, conspiratorial, and sing an Advent hymn, even though it's not Advent.